Welcome back to CNBC Reports. Here again is Dennis Kneale.
President Obama insists he doesn't want to run private companies, but government is having a hard time not meddling just about everywhere. Today, reports are that the feds may want to oust Citigroup CEO Vikram Pandit, and they're shaking up the board of Bank America. We got Barney Frank anchoring hearings on exec comp, and the government's trying to force disclosure all the way down into low-level employees. And then Congressman Frank this week, as the Journal says, quote, intervened to save a GM distribution center in his state. Government has gone wild, and it seems to be getting worse, not better. Peter Flaherty is president of the National Legal and Policy Center. Julie Roginsky is a Democratic strategist with a comprehensive communication group. Peter, do you think these government guys will be able to hold on to their promise to stay out of the way?
No, in fact, I think they quite welcome this opportunity. People like Barney Frank are transactional politicians, and the more government is involved, the more transactions they have a chance to take advantage of. Let's remember, it's Barney Frank who called up the TARP officials and asked for money for an unworthy bank called One United in Massachusetts. It's the same bank on which the board of another member of Congress, the husband of another member of Congress, Maxine Waters, serves. It's the same bank that provided a Porsche as a perk to its executives. Okay. So I see no end to all this.
Julie, do you think it has even begun?
Well, actually, I know that you think regulation and more disclosure for public companies is somehow a bad thing. As a shareholder and a taxpayer who's pumping millions and billions of dollars into a lot of these companies, I would love to see a little bit more disclosure, and frankly, I'd love to see a lot more regulation to prevent
We're not talking about disclosure here. We're talking about taking over companies.
You're absolutely talking about disclosure.
And we're talking about somebody like Fritz Henderson, who was a lifer at GM. He thought his boss was Obama, but the other day Barney Frank calls him up. And if Frank can call and get a result to save 90 jobs in his district, that means 534 other members of Congress are doing the same thing. It's going to lead to great inefficiencies, and it's going to cost us all and raise the cost of everything.
Let me ask you this question for a second, and I actually don't agree that Barney Frank should intervene in specifically saving plans in the district. But I will say to you, I think as a taxpayer, again, who's pumped billions of dollars of my tax money into GM, and GM, frankly, ran its business into the ground so that you and I and the rest of the American public had to pump, let me just finish, had to pump our money into this company to save it. I'd like to have a say, and I'd like our government to have a say who's basically funding GM.
What about this sideshow over the dealerships? The administration arbitrarily closes these dealerships. There was some intimation that some of them were done for political purposes. Mac McClarty, Clinton's chief of staff, all his competitors got wiped out. Then Congress decides to hold hearings on it because auto dealers tend to be prominent people in each community. So we end up with this completely broken process instead of the market where willing buyers meet willing sellers and prices are set by supply and demand.
So
we're going to have a politicized and balkanized process now that's very bad for the future of the free enterprise system.
Let me pose this question to you. As a taxpayer, you just want to give a blank check worth billions of dollars to the same board and to the same company that ran itself into the ground for 30 years. And after all that time, you want to give them a blank check and you want to say, go ahead, don't have hearings,
Peter,
don't have oversight.
let me step in.
Go
the
ahead,
answer there, you know what, we keep doing this to business, that because they messed up on a couple other fronts, that they can't even make the tiniest little decision, Julie. And I think that GM is far better equipped to decide whether a 90-employee plant should close down than Barney Frank.
Dennis, you and I agree on Barney Frank, but the larger issue is you're asking if the government should give a blank check.
Julie, they have a blank check. Citigroup's had a blank check. AIG's had a blank check. GM now has a blank check.
No, they don't have a blank check.
And it's provided such an opportunity for the people writing the check that they all want to get involved. Obama said he said the U.S. government was a reluctant shareholders. I don't believe that for a moment. I think these guys quite like having this much influence.
Let Julie talk now, please.
Wait, listen. You're suggesting, again, that this is akin to my saying to an alcoholic, I'm going to give you money for rehab, but if you want to go buy a six-pack with my cash instead, go to town. I'm not really going to have any oversight on this.
Julie. This is the problem with Democrats and liberals and the Obama people. You know, they refer to businesses and business executives as children, as alcoholics.
No,
you guys are so happy that business screwed up here.
Dennis, Give me a break. I'm not referring to them as children. I'm not referring to them as alcoholics.
You just likened to an alcoholic, Julie.
No, I made an analogy, Dennis. What I'm basically saying to you right now is that I'm not about to give one dime of my money to the same people that screwed up their company,
Julie.
came hat in hand to me and asked me for my tax dollars, and then I say to them, go to town.
Who do you want policing this money? Do you want it to be John Murtha and Charles Rangel and Barney Frank? Or do you want to allow the managements of these companies to actually function as managers and actually have a chance of saving the company?
Can I answer that question? I would actually like a strong, regulatory, streamlined process so that we don't have people going to town with our tax dollars, or God forbid, setting up. Let me answer your question, please. Or God forbid, setting up another huge scheme where all of a sudden there's systemic risk that 10 years down the road, I have to come back here again, and my tax dollars have to bail out these companies again.
Peter,
well, the Wall Street Journal has a story today how the regulators at the FDIC and the comptroller of the currency are now fighting with each other over who gets to exert the most influence over Citigroup. It's regulation and government run amok.
No,
it really is.
And I got to say, you're right to some extent that there's competition among these regulators. I'd like to see one single regulator overlook this whole system.
Got to wrap, guys. Peter, Julie, did a wonderful job. I hope we can do this again. Thanks for being with us. Okay.